welcome to the SVG-TV News for Friday, May 28th. I am Khalil Kato with the details. 8 new positive COVID-19 cases were reported from 177 samples processed on Wednesday, May 26th, resulting in a positivity rate of 4.5%. 2 of the 8 cases are linked to an emergency shelter. No new recoveries were noted over the reporting period. 171 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 2014 cases of COVID-19 along with 1,831 recoveries have been reported in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The public is urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has noted with concern the large gatherings taking place at different locations on mainland St. Vincent and omnibus operators who are not following the protocols. The Prime Minister, who is still in Cuba, called into NBC Radio this morning where he identified 2 hotspots that the police need to look into.
On the minibuses, you have been dropping your guard with the masks. Please, don't do that. This gathering. I asked the Commissioner of Police before I left to speak to the persons, my biker brothers and sisters, down out with the other side of the Texaco gas station near the hospital. And a particular brother on Heritage Square. Even you don't have music, but you have a large gathering. And you have this large gathering without masks, without any physical distancing. We are playing with fire.
The Prime Minister said people do not need to drop their guard as the number of cases of COVID-19 in the country could get out of control. He also cautioned beachgoers against overcrowding.
We have to be careful not to drop our guard. And this thing also of everybody rushing to the beach. Let's try and make Saturday and Sunday, tomorrow and Sunday, beach. Let's stay away now. Let us not overdo this thing because we have to follow the protocol. We see that there's an uptick at the shelters, and if you think Trinidad and Tobago, everybody is boasting out Trinidad was doing so very well. I don't know what happened. Every day now, you have between 10 and 20 persons, new deaths, and 500-600 new cases.
Meanwhile, Acting Prime Minister Montgomery Daniel said that starting this weekend, police will be ramping up their patrols to ensure that the COVID-19 protocols are adhered to.
So I'm saying to you that as of this weekend, the police is being asked to increase in terms of their methods of control in terms of the reduction of COVID-19. So that whether it's amplified music or not, where there are large gatherings, that they cannot be less than the 6 feet as required by the protocol.
The police received a bashing from the acting PM as he noted that they have received reports of officers at the large gatherings observed at several locations.
Is that area in Barley, where the Blackfish area is at this time, where you have a number of gatherings. And it is been identified that even some of the individuals who are supposed to be protecting the law are part and parcel of those gatherings. As a matter of fact, the police was called in for the discussions yesterday at the cabinet to ensure that the cabinet is serious in terms of the execution of the work of the police as it regards to COVID-19.
Students in the learning hubs here in SVG are now being asked to be tested for COVID-19, but with the consent of their parents. Speaking on Star Radio this morning, the acting Prime Minister said that all teachers and students have started testing for the virus in different learning hubs since 2 cases of COVID-19 were recorded in one of the hubs. He reminded teachers that it is mandatory for them to be tested or have a vaccination card to show that they have been vaccinated against the virus.
This time, the Ministry of Health, seeing that we are now having face-to-face instructions, that students present their antigen test results, or where this is not possible, that the students will be tested once given the consent of their parents. And this is critical, of course. This would have been started in some of the schools, bearing in mind that, as was identified in the discussions yesterday, that in one school already a teacher and a child was found to be positive with COVID. And so in terms of the contact tracing and so on, they had to do a lot of testing of the children within that school compound. So that is critical that testing be done but with the children, but it will be done with the written consent of the parents.
Minister Daniel said that at Cabinet meeting on Wednesday, the Ministry of Health shared their concerns about the spread of the coronavirus, and things were put in place to re-establish all protocols which were approved on April 7th.
These protocols were established then, knowing that we were going to have school the following week. And so these protocols basically went out of the window. And so, having heard the proposals of the Ministry of Health, the Cabinet approved the established protocols, that is, the mandatory wearing of masks in public and private spaces.
The Ministry of Health will be involved in a new vaccine reintroduction campaign to get more persons to take the COVID-19 jab. Acting Prime Minister Daniel said that as a way of reducing vaccine hesitancy, the ministry suggested to Cabinet a lottery program can be established.
The ministry will be involved in a new vaccine reintroduction campaign. The ministry feels that there must be new outreach programs to assist in this regard. And so, they have offered to the Cabinet an incentivizing program where a lottery can be established. And that is, the lottery can be done in 2 phases. 1, when the first 30,000 persons are vaccinated, that they can be beneficial in this regard. And 2, when the full 50,000 persons are vaccinated, that second lottery can be drawn, and they too can benefit in this regard.
Scientists monitoring the La Soufrière volcano have reportedly observed reduced seismic activity over the last 24 hours. Speaking on radio today, lead monitoring scientist Dr. Adam Stinton said the earthquakes have reduced, as well as the tons of gas emitted, by at least half, based on readings taken yesterday.
Yesterday afternoon, we had a series of gas measurements carried out, and they yielded a measurement of 242 tons per day, which, if you compare to the measurement that was carried out on Tuesday, which was 463 tons, shows a slight decrease in the amount of gas, certainly yesterday, as measured yesterday afternoon. So, but that amount of gas is still sort of within the range that seems to be developing as we continue these gas measurements.
Dr. Stinton, however, noted that on a clear day, steam can be seen coming out of the crater, and NASA satellites are still picking up anomalies from the volcano.
At times in the last couple of days, so we've been able to see some really strong steam and gas plumes coming out of the summit crater. and as a result of that sort of high cloud cover, there's also been a couple more thermal anomalies detected by using the NASA satellites. In terms of total numbers, I think the last couple of days there seems to have been a slight decrease in the number of earthquakes that we've detected. But overall, the numbers are low still, and there's certainly no sign of any increase.
In reference to pictures taken which shows a dome in the crater of the volcano, Dr. Stinton said there is no evidence to suggest that a dome is growing, but that it could have been remnants from the May 22nd explosion.
We've also seen these photographs that have been taken from the summit crater rim, and to us it doesn't look like there is a lava dome that's growing inside the crater now. We can be fairly sure about this because of other satellite images that we have access to that show there have been no changes or no significant changes in the summit crater since the last explosion on the 22nd of April. So that mound that people can see in these photographs, it may be a small lava dome that was produced immediately after the last explosion on the 22nd of April and therefore has not grown since, or it may just be an accumulation of ash and tephra around the main source or the main vent in the floor of the crater.
The Forestry Division welcomes the green vegetation that is now flourishing in some areas affected by the eruption of La Soufrière. Director of Forestry, Fitzgerald Providence, had earlier indicated that more than 70% of the forest of La Soufrière was affected by the volcano. That should be the volcanic eruption. Now, more than 1 month after the volcano erupted, the forest is regaining its green.
Resilience in some areas where the vegetation is starting to flush back. We're still concerned in terms of the amount of ash more in the red area, red zone, that is lying there that can move with the heavy rainfall. We know that particularly on the slopes of the volcano there was massive damage in terms of the pyroclastic flows and the heat, the ash. But even in some of those areas you're seeing the rebirth of some plants and so on. And we're hoping that it will be able to come back. There's some areas where we may have to go in and do interventions, but we want to continue to monitor, and we encourage persons not to go in and disturb the forest, not to try to bring in exotic plants to disturb the forest area, but let it be guided in a proper way.
Providence said that in their assessment of the impacts of the volcano, they have been able to determine which plants and trees were more resilient.
I noticed that the trees with the smaller leaves, the fine leaves plants, were able to survive better because I guess the weight of the ash wasn't able to weigh them down as much as the bigger leaf plants. So what we call pioneer species such as trumpet bush that has a bigger leaf, we saw a lot of damage in the forest with that. But when you saw the trees that had smaller leaves, or also trees that had lost their leaves during the time, like the mahogany trees. We have a plantation of mahogany in an area called Savannah Gutter in the red zone, and the trees have already flushed back, but they didn't have on the leaves during that time. It was in the dry season when they dropped their leaves. So because they didn't have the leaves, they didn't have the weight of the ash to break them down. So it's an opportunity here. We also studying the impact of the volcanic ash on the plants. We know that it will bring nutrients to the soil, but right now it has to go through a time of breaking down to add to the soil.
As part of the preparation for the hurricane season, which starts on Tuesday, June 1st, Providence said forestry officers will be engaged in the clearing of logs along riverbanks and other areas where they have been deposited.
We will be working to also monitor our streams and rivers to make sure that we can reduce some of the debris like fallen logs and so on that may come down if there's flooding. So we're doing that assessment also, and we continue to assess the forests. We continue to do our work in terms of assisting in terms of the wildlife, assessing the situation, and working on doing more monitoring of the species out there.
Vincentians should be mindful that their builders are using the present building codes when constructing homes, as the codes are designed to protect against the impact of hurricane-force winds up to a certain degree. This is according to the town planner in the Ministry of Housing, Land Surveys, Physical Planning and Informal Settlements, Donette Hull. During a recent interview on a program on FEC3, Hull noted that roofs are often a casualty of hurricane-force winds. She said while adhering to the building codes can be costly, persons end up paying more in the long run.
Enough, especially in the hurricane season, when they are building their homes, the builders must remember that connection between the ring beam and the rafters to have them use hurricane straps, because what we have noticed over the years that roofs are always affected by hurricane force winds. You know, we have the building code. We encourage persons to build using the building code as their guideline. The building code was established to mitigate against damage, severe damage to household and the housing stock. So once you follow the building codes and the guidelines, you should be able to have a house that will withstand at least. And the building guidelines is your best defense against a hurricane.
The town planner said the region has begun to experience Category 5 hurricanes, and while building to withstand these storms can be quite expensive, there is also the suggested alternative of building a single room in the home that persons can evacuate to, which is strong enough to sustain high-intensity winds. Hull said, given the present situation, applications for the construction of homes north of the Rabaca Dry River have been put on hold due to the uncertainty of the present hazard.
At the moment, we have placed on hold applications in the red zone, like above the Dry River especially, because we are uncertain of the pending hazard. So until we get the all clear, we have placed those applications on hold at the moment.
The town planner used the opportunity to encourage persons to utilize the Ministry of Housing to their advantage by using their free consultation when constructing their homes.
Encourage persons to follow the building codes and the guidelines, and let's work together. The physical planning, we are here to guide. We are here to guide you, we are here to discuss with you, dialogue with you, so that we can get the best result and build your resilience. We are here as a government agency to provide that advice for you. Depending on where you're building, you may have one hazard or the other. So once you seek our advice, we would give our advice freely and accurately.
SVG's building codes and guidelines were compiled after the destruction of Grenada by Hurricane Ivan. Hull disclosed that a team of engineers and architects from across the region created the codes in accordance with the weather patterns of the region. Though not yet confirmed, she shared that a team of engineers may already be convening to revise the codes and guidelines, taking into consideration the impacts of a volcanic eruption, so that in the future, persons may be guided accordingly. The recruitment of some 500 Vincentians by Sandals Resorts International will add value to SVG's hospitality and tourism industry. This is according to Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, Sustainable Development and Culture, Carlos James. Minister James made the comment while visiting the Sandals Recruitment program at the Beachcombers Hotel Conference Room yesterday. Sandals is currently on island to recruit Vincentians to be trained across several Sandals locations in the region. At the end of the program, the Vincentians will return to employment at the Beaches St. Vincent and the Grenadines Resort upon completion of that facility at Bookament Bay. According to the Tourism Minister, over 1,300 applications were received by Sandals for the recruitment and training exercise, of which 500 will be considered in the first phase of the recruitment and training program. Minister James said, from all indications, Sandals is quite pleased with the quality of the applicants, noting it shows that the country has strengthened its human resource capacity, making reference to the work being done at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College and the technical institutes across the island. The experience gained by these Vincentians, Minister James noted, will certainly add value to the tourism, add value to the delivery of services within the industry. Minister James commended Sandals for reaching out to St. Vincent and the Grenadines at this critical time and lauded the efforts of the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez, for negotiating the arrangements with Sandals on behalf of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Sandals is expected to commence construction on the beaches St. Vincent and the Grenadines Resort later this year. Due to the explosive eruption of the La Soufrière volcano on April 9th, the project for the construction of the new Araroot factory in Orange Hill was placed on hold. The construction work had already started, but had to be discontinued because the project is located in the red zone where the eruption had a bad impact. The group, including the Deputy Agricultural Officer, engineers, contractors, and other members of the construction team, went on a site visit on Tuesday to do an assessment of the damage. During the assessment, the Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer, Renato Gomes, said that the new Araroot project is very essential to the future of SVG's Araroot industry.
An assessment to see what it takes in time when we would need to start back the project and to determine what impact the volcano had on the actual project itself. So I'm here with the team from the UNIDO and the engineers and the contractors who are also executing the project. So we're going to just walk around, do some assessment and see where we are and what needs to be done. Of course, this project is very essential to the future of the Araroot industry. We know the state of the old factory we had at Oria, and that in itself has been totally destroyed by the volcano. So this project here is key to the future of the Araroot industry going forward.
The project was scheduled to be completed over a 6-month period. However, because of the eruption and the damage caused, it will be extended.
For the construction of a factory shell for the Araroot industry. We are here on site after the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. This is the first time that we are back. Since then, we had photos, but we are here, Minute Maid, as the local contractor and myself as a civil engineer, to assess what could be a dollar value or cost to what the eruption impact has on the ground measures here.
When the volcano has been erupted, we are about to cast beams and to cast a slab to get the steel structure up. So because of the volcanic eruption that hinder us from moving forward, but we are in the process now as we are here now for the first time to do the assessment to see what can be done going forward. All right, thank you.
50% of the project, and because of the volcano, we had to cease work. I'll be very grateful in terms that we get things together and hopefully that we could be able to get back on the ground and move forward with this, because I mean, persons in this area really depending on such a project.
The damage included the storage room where key pieces of equipment were stored.
Now is our storage area where the roof has been completely collapsed, where we had all of our tools, equipments and materials. Looking at it now is that we still cannot go in there because the walls actually are cracked and it's dangerous for us to go enter. But we can look into the windows and we can see that all the wheelbarrows are actually bent and damaged, and we cannot see any sign of cement or steel also because the galvanized from the roof is covering everything, and you have like 12 inches of ash on top of them. So we still cannot give you any good information of what is actually in our storage at this point in time.
Yeah, so what we are seeing here is couple loads of basin that have been covered with the ash from the volcano. So we'll have to check them out and see if they still can be used on the site. We'll get proper testing and so done to see if it can be still used on the site.
An altercation between two brothers in Lourdes yesterday resulted in SVG's 17th homicide. According to reports, Larry and Timroy Williams were involved in a dispute and assaulted each other with cutlasses. Both brothers received chop wounds. However, Larry's wounds were fatal and he reportedly died on the spot.